The
illustrious Jabba bids you welcome.
I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
Nuh-uh. And Peyton Jones.
Hey, Church Planter, this is some other guy.
Now that I can get behind. Hey, guys, this is the new and improved Church Planter Podcast with formerly Pete Mitchell and formerly Peyton Jones. Now two guys that live in mom's basement and drink beer. According to Ed Stetzer. Remember that?
Well, you know, if it came from Ed, it must be true.
Who are you guys? Are you just hanging out in mom's basement?
Yeah. You know what's funny is I am dragging this morning. So I am only about 5 or 6 sips of coffee in. That's never a good sign. And I honestly, I don't know that I got any good stories.
I do. And it's connected to that. Good segue, Pete. So here's what happened to me today. I get up. It's Red Cup Day. You know that, right? At Starbucks.
I have no idea.
Merry coffee, everybody. Means. That's what it says. If you go into Starbucks today while supplies last, you get a red cup. Now, for those of you listening.
Wait. Can I pull out the Christian card? Wait a second, man. They took the cross off the cup.
No. Even though there was never a cross on the cup.
No. We must say that there was. And now they are abandoning our Christian brethren.
Wasn't the big thing they were going to put a pentagram, which that whole thing started as a joke.
Or was it a satire story like Babylon Bee or something?
It was, and everybody took it serious, and the Christian community got all hot and bothered and riled up about it. And, you know, I put on my Facebook story this morning, I took a picture of the coffee cup that said, the free plastic reusable red cup that I got for going at butt crack of dawn. And it said Merry Coffee, and I put on my Facebook. It's a story, so it'll probably be gone by the time this airs live. And you can't get any more red cups. But anyways, this saying is Merry Coffee, and I put, you know, for Starbucks wisely knows that God calls coffee to fall on the just and the unjust. Well done, Starbucks. You know, so Merry Coffee works, right? Because it's common grace, as they call it in theological terms. So anyways, I go there this morning, I get that, you know, eggnog latte, first one of the season, tastes like sweet phlegm in a cup mixed with coffee. And I take it home to my wife, and I'm helping my wife get something. We're going to talk to Wales later today, and so I'm getting everything set up for that and Ministry Ninja podcast. And as I'm doing that, I guess mayhem happens in the kitchen. They have knocked over my eggnog latte, the children, right? This is my 2 girls, 6 and 10, have knocked over the Precious. And I don't know about this. Like, I'm totally oblivious. All hell's breaking loose in my life. My coffee, because I did not brew a cup, is in that cup. I did microwave the leftover out of the pot. You guys know how it goes. You're church planners. Every little bit counts. And so anyways, later on, they're whispering when I take them to school. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And they go, we have a surprise. You'll find out. So I go to pick up my coffee, and there's this card, little homemade card with money stuffed in it, attached to the side of the coffee cup.
That's awesome.
And I look, and, you know, remember, I don't know. And there's this, like, dear Dad, we're so sorry. We knocked over your coffee this morning. Here is $4.75 to buy another one that we took from our own money. And my wife's texting me the picture going, I can't stop laughing at this. But anyways, so I'm like, whoa. And so I take I'm like, oh, guys, you know, I'm like, that's so cool. Like, look, I'm not going to take your money. Like, I haven't read the whole note, by the way, and I take a drink. Like, I just see that there's a note. You spilled my coffee. Okay. Because I said, well, so you spilled, like, there's some in here. And they go, yeah. But they don't say anything. And so I take a sip and they like cringe. And I go, what? And they're like, you weren't supposed to drink it, Dad.
Oh
and I'm like, what's wrong? And they go, ugh. And they're like smiling and covering their faces and like laughing and giggling. And I'm like, and remember, I haven't had much coffee. I've only had a few sips of this thing. So like my blood's starting to boil. What's going on? I'm like, Dad. And then later, my wife sends me the note because I've left the house already by this time. This is what the last of the note says. P.S. When we cleaned it up, we used paper towels and squeezed those back into the cup.
Nice.
I have drunk eggnog latte squeezed out of paper towels back into the cup. Imagine the horror.
That's so awesome.
So I'm dragging today as well.
So, dude, last night, Luke is telling me that he's got this little, bank, little shaped like a Zamboni, and it's got money in it. And he's like,
what's a Zamboni? Oh, that's the ice race, ice skating ring thing. Yeah. Okay.
So he's like, Dad, I got $80. I'm like, $80? I'm not buying you a dang thing ever again.
Whoa.
When are you going to start buying me some stuff?
Taking that to Star Wars land, son.
Dude, $80?
Build a droid your stinking self, kid.
He is spoiled. How does a kid his age who has no job, how does he get $80?
I never had $80 in my account.
No kidding.
Till I like had a part-time job, and it quickly went out because I had to pay insurance, gas, and whatever else.
I spent all my money from my very first paycheck on laser tag.
No stinking way. You're freaking my
rifles
hero.
And everything, not just the little black guns, but I mean the full size AR-15 rifle laser tags.
Oh my gosh! And we're surprised at who you became in adulthood. I mean,
do you know how much money in batteries all of that stuff costs? Like that was $30-$40 right there, just the batteries alone.
Hey, boss, gonna get a raise? Laser tag ain't cheap,
I got a habit to feed. Yeah, that was what I did with my first paycheck.
That is so funny.
It's funny in light of today. I never put it together with how I live today, but
yeah. That's pretty much why you still go to work.
It pretty much is. Yeah. So,
dude, that's so rad.
By the way, on a little side note, I haven't had a chance to talk about this because Dan and I weren't able to record our podcast earlier this week, but did a shooting competition last week and took first overall.
Oh, no way, dude. Congrats.
I know. I still not
For those of you new to the
happened.
podcast, welcome to the podcast. This is what we call Smack Talk. It lasts somewhere around 30 minutes. And then the second 30 minutes are our very important topics on church planning. But you kind of got to get to know us, right? It's kind of like if you're a real church planner, that means that you're probably more apostolic. This is how you roll, right? You get to know people. It's like, hey, wine and dine me a little bit. Don't just get me saved. Let's build some relationship, do some discipleship. Let's have a meal. Let's talk, and then boom.
I guess boom.
I mean, then we can start talking. About other stuff.
And why don't you tell everyone right now what they should stick around for? What's today's topic? Well,
today's topic, Pete, for those who go on to the next level today,
I want to talk about
they'll receive. I feel like it's a game show, like for those who go to the next round, they'll receive.
I'm trying to give you a little salt and pepper soundtrack in the background.
Is that what that was?
That's what that was. Let's talk about baby. Let's talk about and me. Come on.
We should drag more often because the synergy is good. Maybe
what should we call today's episode? The one about sex? Can we call it that? Do I have to mark it explicit because I use that word?
Maybe. I'm wondering though, because there's a synergy right now. Maybe when we record this, we're just high on caffeine.
Well, I did take 600 milligrams of caffeine, and now I'm drinking coffee. So add that to that.
There we go.
And this could end up being a great podcast, or the quickest podcast we've ever done. I'm not sure.
Lagging at the start, flying at the end.
I'm just saying.
So, hey, today's topic is actually about sexual purity. We've had yet another leader who has confessed. I guess
I don't think leader is the right word.
Public figure, perhaps.
There you go. Because there's no one in all of Christendom who would call that guy a leader ever.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really hesitant to even mention him because it's so soon, and I don't know anything about him or what's happened. But obviously, it's hit the news that John Christ has. There's been allegations. I don't know the truth or untruth of those. He has said that there was some truth to some of it. So all that to say, anytime a big public figure like that, within Christianity or who represents Christianity, it's always hard. It's always kind of like, oh, okay. And I'll talk about why it's hard. Some people, he should never have been up there on the pedestal. That's not the point. There is a biblical.
To me, I was like, okay, the dude was a comedian, and he wasn't like even a theologically accurate comedian. He was more of like just a dude who grew up in the church, and so he knew all the buttons to push. Like,
right.
That's why even today I'm like, okay, so why is everyone like, I don't get why everyone's like in shock. It's like,
right.
Why? He's not a pastor. He's just a dude who grew up in the church and had some funny things to say about the church. He wasn't even theologically accurate most of the time. Like, right. I don't get it. What's everyone all up in arms about?
Right. So the idea is that do you want to go into it now?
Oh, go for it.
Okay. So
that was the quickest Mac talk ever. Break.
It was, but knowing us, we'll go straight back into it. So the idea of John Christ is that he, for good or for ill, it's kind of like when Paul says, some preach Christ, and I'm not putting him in this category. I want to be kind to him because that dude's got enough stuff crapping down on his life right now. He's going to need to get really close to Jesus, and apparently there's people that have been victimized by him. So, and I'm saying very carefully. Apparently, look, I don't want to be the guy. It always irritates me. If you notice me on social media, I stand back and I watch and I wait for the stories to unfold. I've been in leadership long enough to know the first part of the story is usually inaccurate. And how Proverbs says, whoever tells his story first will be perceived to be telling the truth. So, and then there's also a proverb that says, a fool speaks before hearing all of the facts. So today's podcast, I don't really want to talk about him. I want to talk about us. I want to talk about what do we do if we're in a position of public visibility and we get, we start struggling. How do we handle that? Some of you listening are in ministry and you maybe have demons that you're wrestling with today. And I want to talk through that, what you can do and who you can talk to and some steps you can take, because that is important. But as far as John Christ himself, I don't know what other people's reactions are. For me, it's always the kind of thing where I know because it's humor, he has been widely shared. So this will hit secular media at a Netflix show coming on, and it is funny, whether you're religious or not. Like if I hear a comedian to make fun of atheists or Mormons or, evolution or whatever, I will laugh and I will watch it regardless of whether or not it's my belief. And people do enjoy, and The Simpsons prove this, that The Simpsons make fun of church all the time. And I put John Christ or Christ. I don't know if it's Christ or Christ. I'm not a huge fan, but I've seen some of his stuff and it was funny. But I think that what we're looking at is he is kind of like a personal version of The Simpsons. And
do you
because
remember
of
that episode of Seinfeld where the dentist becomes a comedian and Jerry's offended, and they're like, "Oh, you're offended because he's making something that had to do with like Jewish jokes or something like that." And he's like, "No, I'm offended as a comedian." Like, sorry, that's what all of this just reminds me of. No, I'm offended as a comedian. It's just not very funny. Sorry.
No, that is
Reverend
funny. I actually thought
Simpsons
I thought
made me
what
think
I
of
saw
Reverend
of him
and that's
was
what made me laugh.
No, that Seinfeld's freaking hilarious, and I've watched Seinfeld go off on the last comedians in cars getting coffee.
Which is a great show,
amazing.
I've seen every episode. It's wonderful.
I love it. I'm the same. I can't wait for the next season. He is a very fascinating dude, super intelligent.
I love how he's always like, "Oh, you got to leave a big tip. You got to," because they're going to go back and say, "Oh, Jerry Seinfeld, he left a lousy tip." So it's like you want to be his waiter because he's going to leave a big tip because he's afraid of what you're going to say about him. I love that.
Right. No, it's great. And but anyways, what was I?
I don't know. Sorry, I totally ruined your train of thought.
No, but he's kind of like The Simpsons, John Crist. And so here's the deal. Does it affect Christians? Yes. And here's any time, like I was saying, where Paul says some preach Christ out of selfish ambition, some don't. Nevertheless, Christ is preached. He's glad that Christ is being proclaimed. Those of you that know, I'm writing a textbook right now. I'm writing a textbook, and it'll shock everyone to hear me say, of all people, that really church planning isn't a big deal in the book of Acts. It's just not. It's not a focus. Even though I constantly am referring back to Acts to see what the early church did, I don't think the focus is church planning. Paul's focus of his entire ministry, both when Jesus appears to him and whenever Paul talks about his ministry as an apostle, is proclamation of Jesus as Lord. So whenever we hear somebody who is a spokesperson for the faith, which I would say, even though John Crist may not qualify as a leader, he, good or ill, he, because of his platform and fame, became inadvertently a spokesperson for Christianity. Now, if you analyze it, you say, well, it wasn't good. I mean, if anything, he was kind of speaking, he was making fun of us, and okay, and I love that personally. I love to be made fun of as Christians. I think it's funny. But that said, it will have an effect, and here's the effect it has. See, those Christians, they don't have it any more figured out than we do. And so the problem is, it's kind of like when Paul in 2 Corinthians goes to defend himself. Paul didn't really care. Like, if you understand the context of what's bothering him in 2 Corinthians, is that they told him, hey, you're not welcome back here, Paul, until you get letters of recommendation from someone we respect. Then we'll think about letting you back to Corinth. Now, Paul is concerned because he talks about false teachers, and he says, look, I'm not concerned about me. I'm concerned about the gospel here. And so I think we got to approach this. I think everybody's human. I think John Crist, if he victimized people, that puts things in a different category. That means that there's a sickness and he needs to get help for whatever addictions. And I think he's admitted that. But again, I don't want to speak because I don't know enough. But, if it's just that the dude has fallen, into something, he was unmarried. If he's fallen into something with somebody and, says, hey, I know the gospel's better than that. He said, I didn't live up to my Christian convictions. Then I, that's okay. So The victimization is a different category than just a dude who screwed up and said, "Hey, I did not possess myself," as Paul says in the old King James, with integrity. And those are two completely different things. But I do think that it has a broad impact on our witness as Christians. I do think it undermines the gospel when this happens. And I believe that that's the reason that Paul says, Timothy, make sure that you flee the evil desires of youth. When you put someone in eldership or deaconship, make sure they're faithful to their wife, right? Like there's character issues so that things don't get undermined, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's kind of I don't know, man. It's kind of funny because Wayne and I were actually talking about some of this stuff yesterday in the context of David and Solomon and Bathsheba, and I mean the whole gambit. And I mean, it's not a new issue, right?
Right.
I mean, this is an issue as old as man, clearly. And I mean, you got something that goes back that far, that many thousands of years. It's going to always be an issue, and that's why I think, when we've talked about this stuff in the past. One of the things that we've talked about is you have to incorporate certain safeguards into your life so that you don't put yourself into a position where temptation will overtake you.
Right.
And that's, I don't know. I think back about so many people, like even the guy who ordained you, right?
Yeah.
And he had issues that came down, and it's just like, I think we start off and think to ourselves, I don't need to be that strict. Like, what was Billy Graham's rule? Like, he wouldn't even get in an elevator if there was another woman in there. And but he's one of those few guys who didn't have any issues, and at least I don't remember any ever coming up about him. Do you? About Billy Graham?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Kept his nose clean.
Because he had these rules that he lived by. And then you even have guys like Mike Pence who, basically have very similar rules. And, of course, he's then mocked. I can't believe, look at the way he lives and does this and that and the next thing. And it's like, yeah, but he doesn't want to have any of these issues, which doesn't mean he won't. I mean, I don't know Mike Pence. I mean, he's a politician, so I pretty much think he's the scum of the earth, just, right there. But at least, based on what has been said about him publicly and what he's said about himself, those aren't going to be issues, hopefully, that he runs into, because he has these safeguards and he's chosen to live by them. And I think we just, I don't know. I think too many times we're like, oh, well, this isn't that big of a deal. Right. I don't need to worry about this. This is a friend from, junior high or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the excuse is that people start with, but I don't know.
Well, and it's always there. It's always an issue. I always think to when Jesus is sitting on the side of the well with the woman there, and she's, depending on how you read, there's two ways to read it. That either she left 5 men or 5 men left her, or is a combination of both. And I think it fits the narrative better if she's been tossed to the side. I think what Jesus says makes a lot more sense. But she is fishing. Here's a guy talking to her, and she makes the point, you Jews don't normally talk to us Samaritans. So she's asking the question in her mind, why is this dude talking to me? And she starts flirting with him. If you go back and read that, she says some flirtatious things to him. And there were dynamics there. And part of Jesus's reason, I think, that he said, you'll be, you drink from this well and you'll thirst again. But if you drink from the living water that I give you, and remember he's sitting on the well, and it was a gentlemanly thing for the male to get the water for the female. It actually, it goes back to like Jacob's well and all that kind of stuff, that he draws water for them and yada, yada. But she is misunderstanding. And he says, look, you'll never thirst again. And she's being a little bit coy with him. And so these are just dynamics that happen. And of course he's telling her, look, all the love of all these other men have let you down, but here's a never failing well that will well up within you, that will be in you, and you'll never thirst for this love. It'll be there forever, yada, yada. But even there, you see the dynamics. Mary Magdalene, people have tried to make this big thing about, Mary Magdalene and Jesus having an affair. But, she surely, there were, Jesus Christ Superstar, which I don't go to for theology or biblical studies. But that brings out the fact that, hey, naturally, this woman's going to be drawn to him and be in love with him and have a crush on him, because how could she not? Here's the most amazing man she's ever met, a man she can trust. So when you're in ministry, you have those same dynamics going all the time. I remember about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, some woman made this comment when she found out that Andrew is married to a pastor. And she was just like, it was almost like, first she craps all over her own husband in the conversation. Then she says, that must be so amazing to be married to a man of God.
Did she just say, yes, being married to Peyton is so amazing?
Well, Andrea comes home, she tells me, she goes, I almost vomited, because this is why women get infatuated with pastors, because there's this fantasy that this man, this man of God is somehow, he is Jesus. He's the man of faithfulness. And it's not true. All of us in our ministry, we know, like Paul says, hey, those of you that read John Christ and think you stand, take heed lest you fall. Like, we know who we are, right? Like, I know who I am. I know that I'm not above anything. For that reason, like, I'm not on Instagram. I was on it. I have a account I think I need to delete, but as soon as I started hearing like people saying butts and boobs are all, I'm like, yeah, I'm off. I posted once about my run
on Instagram.
Yeah. And
I don't do the Instagram.
Well, and that's the thing is, by the way, I'm
Generation
judging.
X. So I'm pretty much locked in on Facebook, and that's kind of the only thing I can do.
Yeah, Gen X. Yeah. It's so funny, man, because I don't judge anyone who's on Instagram, but you got to have your own boundaries. And I think that's kind of where you're going earlier. That's one of mine. And at some point, you have to create a boundary. There has to be places you don't go. There has to be things you won't watch or see with your eyes. There has to, and when I say don't go, like maybe you need something that's like a type of accountability on your computer. Maybe your wife needs to get emailed a report of every website you've been to in the month, like, porn, all that kind of stuff. Like there's all those things that we probably need to be, hedging, and a hedge of protection is what Satan called it with Job. He says, you've put, God, a hedge of protection around Job, and I can't touch him. And, it's kind of like where Paul says, flee all this stuff. We live in a world, somehow we got to create a protective perimeter around ourselves. Gosh, as I'm hearing myself say that, I'm not anti-culture. Pete and I, we geek out on culture, and we probably watch things you wouldn't watch, Pete and I watch Breaking Bad,
Don't include me in your sinful life, sir.
I mean,
I go to the range. That's it. That's the extent of what I do.
So there are certain shows that, like when Game of Thrones came out, those are hot people.
Which by the way, I'm about halfway through season 3 finally of Stranger Things. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Not as good as you made it out to be. I was like, where's the great... I'm like, okay.
I thought Stranger Things 3 was the second best season. I couldn't stand 2.
2 is awful. It took me like 8 months to go back through 2.
3 was just fun. It was like a fun romp through the 80s.
I guess.
That's all it was. It was just making fun of the 80s all the time. And I got time for that. When you get to another, I can't blow it for you, but you're going to get to a scene and you're going to be like, that's awesome. And I just can't blow it for you. But it's an 80s homage. But anyways, I digress.
We'll bring this back into Smack Talk. You just wait and see.
I'm easily distracted by bright, shiny 80s objects. But so
did I
going
waste
back to
my
this
life
whole
by
thing,
making podcasts? Thousands of people listen to your podcasts every day. You wasted thousands of lives making podcasts.
that was so good. He's standing at the
ever.
gates of heaven asking God, "Did I waste my life by making podcasts?" No, he says.
You wasted
Thousands of people
lives.
listen to you every day. You wasted thousands of lives.
Oh, dude, I saw that and I was like, this speaks to me on so many levels.
So yes, you and I are clearly wasting our own and other people's lives, but there are certain perimeters and hedges, and I'm going to say this because it seems the most obvious thing to me, and nobody ever says it, and I think it's because perhaps there is so much secret sin in the church that we don't feel like this is something that anyone can come out and say. But I'm going to say it because I think it's biblical. And I think if we operated this way, things would be a little bit different. Here's the deal. If you have private ongoing sin, you should not be in public ministry. Let me repeat that. If you have private ongoing sin, you should not be in public ministry. Now, that doesn't mean that you do something stupid or you look at something or there's, some naughty bits bounce around on the telly and you don't change the channel and you linger and you're there and you're like, okay, that was wrong. Or let's say you headed over to a website. But the point is Christianity is about repentance. Like, we repent. If you do those things and you repent, right? But if you've got this ongoing wormhole that's burrowing in your life, you shouldn't probably, the biblical thing is, if these things are going on, you shouldn't be in any kind of public ministry, if that makes sense. So if I'm like, oh, my ministry is this to that, character matters, right? What at some point, if I allow those things in my life, I'm either saying I don't mind that sin in my life, or I want that sin more than I want, but at some point you've made a choice. You've made two incongruent choices. You've made a choice that says, I'm okay with staying in ministry and being in sin. And the other choice is, I'm okay being in sin and staying in ministry. And these two things don't go together. So what needs to happen is, if you've got an addiction issue with sexual things, there are places and ways you can get help. And if it were cocaine, if it were alcohol, if it were other things, then you would stop. You would take a sabbatical. If you were at work legally has to let you do this. You go to rehab, you get the help. And in ministry, it would be the same. And I know, maybe people go, oh, but I can't take that break. Well, first off, that's what team leadership exists for. So if you don't have team leadership, I don't know what to tell you. So, but yes, get the help. talk to people that can steer you in the right direction. And if you're working at a church and you need to take a break, and you don't feel comfortable saying what it is, if you're not victimizing people, like if you're victimizing people, you're just done. You're just flat out done. Get out now. And I'm telling you, if you're hearing this and you're victimizing people, get out. Don't know how else to say it. You cannot be in ministry. If you're struggling with, let's say, looking at porn, get help, right? Just get help. There's plenty of help. There's XXX Church. There's, software programs that, accountability software. Like there's all kinds of things. Maybe you're like, oh, my phone. I installed this thing on my phone that doesn't allow me. Now, this is what it means. It's kind of like if your left hand causes you to sin, cut it off. I installed this thing on my phone. I can't look at pictures on my phone. That was just one of the things that, it wiped out, was any ability for me to look up any image on any website. It will not come up.
Really?
Yeah. And for me, it's kind of like, well, if that's the price I got to pay to eliminate that temptation to look at porn on my phone, that's what it's got to be. So, again, if the left hand causes you to sin, like Jesus told us, like, hey, do this. And I guess in a way, Jesus' statement there is strong, and it's meant to be that, hey, just cut it out, like cut out all ability to do it. Like that's what you need. You need to be ruthless with sin. And I just feel that we're not serious enough about it, or somewhere we've believed the lie that I have to be in sexual sin. I'll tell you, I grew up with porn in my house. I think about porn. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. I think about it, and my wife and I talk about it. We talk about it. So she'd be like, "Hey, have you been thinking about?" And if I am, I tell her, "Yeah, I have actually." If I haven't, and we're open, like there's no sin in that. There's times we'll have these conversations. Hey, sometimes I get these thoughts. Do you think these are wrong? For me to get these thoughts, or these is this just part of being a human? And we'll have those kinds of conversations. And I would hope that all of you in marriage are able to at least work. I realize sexuality is very complicated, and particularly if you start factoring in like, maybe someone got sexually abused, these things kind of, they can take time and trust and therapy. And so it's not one size fits all. I'm not trying to indicate that at all in your marriage with your wife, but hopefully that'd be something that you could work through as really honest conversations. Keep in mind, my wife and we've been in counseling 24 years, in marriage counseling, just because that's what we do. And we're able to talk about all this stuff with a stranger, these things that have to come up,
Right.
But sorry, dude, I'm sucking all the oxygen out.
I just wanted to give everyone a breather.
Deep breath. Baby steps. Baby steps. What about Bob?
I barely remember that. Which I thought was funny. You didn't recognize Robert Paulson.
I know.
Do you remember it now? Who Robert Paulson was?
I do. Hey, he's a guy that is in his, he has breasts. He's in the.
It was Meatloaf, and Meatloaf.
As soon as you said Meatloaf, I went, oh. And there was something in the movie where
he had his name back. In death, we remember Robert Paulson. That's why I thought that meme was so great. And you're like, I don't get it.
Yeah, you sent me a Yoda meme with it says Robert Paulson. His name is. Then it was funny, but prior to that, and I'm going, and he texts back, how are we even amigos?
Which is funny because there are so many things, because you and I have said this, you and I have completely different tastes when it comes to movies. Like, we both like sci-fi, but outside of that general love for the genre, I don't think we're anything alike at all.
I think you're right, actually.
I by the way, I'm progressing in my life. I've gone from Epstein didn't kill himself memes to Epstein was murdered memes. So, I'm progressing.
Well, that's
worry.
good.
You'll
Personal
catch on
growth.
to that a little bit later.
Personal growth is really important. But as I got that meme, I told you Smack Talk could come back in. As we got that meme,
the coffee's starting to kick in.
I don't have any. My kid spilled it. What little I drank came through a paper towel. But yeah, so when I saw that, I thought it was a Epstein meme. And I was trying to, that's where my mind was. I'm trying to work it out.
Because everything I've been sending is Epstein memes lately.
Yeah.
Like it has reached the point where I have people literally private messaging me and texting me Epstein memes. Like that's how many I put out online. I've become the source now for Epstein memes.
It's so funny.
So I could understand why the Robert Paulson didn't make any sense to you. I just thought it was hilarious when I saw it.
And I thought, like if you had said Tyler Durden, that would have stuck out. But,
Yeah.
So anyways,
right now, all the millennials have no idea what in the world we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. That would be.
Go watch Fight Club. All right. That should be like Church Planning 101, Fight Club.
And watch it. Again, keep in mind it is an R rating and has potty language. Don't watch it with your kids. And
I'm sure it does. Oh my gosh. That's right. We would never encourage people to watch that. Never mind. I take everything back. Never go see that movie.
Well,
Robert Paulson. I don't know who Robert Paulson is.
It was amazing.
Who's Robert Paulson?
It's amazing social commentary, and still holds up to this day. The social
and what was really amazing is when you finally find out he gave birth to himself.
He gave birth to himself. I sent you back the meme or the response. Pete, are you ruining another movie for me?
Oh man, you guys don't. If you haven't been a long-time listener of the podcast, you just don't understand. And go watch the movie Predestination and just know he gives birth to himself.
Yeah, he pretty much just ruined it for you.
But it's still a great movie. In fact, I'm like, I really want that movie to come out on Netflix because I'd really like to see it again, and I don't want to pay.
Yeah, it was actually a very, very good movie. So, but hey, guys, really, if you do need to talk to somebody, talk to a coach, I know there's always like the fear, if I talk to someone, I have to tell my wife. Well, you did marry your wife, and faithfulness is a big deal, and I don't want to destroy my marriage. And it's more than what we have time to get into today. But what I would say is you need to get help or get out, or, the two don't go together. And that was kind of my point today, is there are ways to walk towards purity. There are things that you can do, but it does start usually with talking to somebody. If you need to see a counselor, if you need to grab a friend, somebody, sin thrives in the darkness. It actually grows in power in secret. But as you confess and you start to tell people things, that's, I believe, in many ways, one of the first major steps to repentance. And it becomes a way to actually get life change. Hiding sin, it's never gonna help you. So I know this is old school. I know people don't want to hear this kind of stuff. They want to hear, oh, grace, grace, grace. And, like what you do doesn't matter. But, for the sake of the gospel, it does matter, because keep in mind, the gospel is not just Jesus died on the cross for your sins so you could be forgiven. It was also that Jesus rose from the dead so we could walk in newness of life. That's why Paul preached the death and resurrection of Jesus. It was more than just a ticket to heaven and, hey, what you do doesn't matter. What you do matters. That's why the resurrection happened, because although that can't save you, the way you live proclaims the lordship of Jesus. And when I say lordship of Jesus, I don't mean lordship theology, lordship salvation. That's another theological minefield that I don't want to get into. But it literally means the way you walk worships Jesus, that purity, that ability to overcome sin. Paul links that back to the resurrection in Romans 6. That is possible, and it is powerful, and it is true. And if we believe the lie that it's a pipe dream, then how in the heck is this generation going to have hope? So walking in newness of life is part of it. Repentance, confession, constantly surrendering. And when I say lordship of Jesus, I mean, that he is who he said he is. And either he is, and he's stronger than that sin in your life, or he's not who he said he is, and he can't do it. So that's my piece on War, Pete. That's where I'd probably leave it today. But for those of you, I just who are kind of waffling in the middle, my opinion is that if there was deep secret sin in any leader's life, that they get out way before. And you mentioned the guy that ordained me years ago, and he's a model. He's actually a model of what to do. Yeah. Rather than what not to do. His story was he kissed a woman that he was counseling. They got a little too close, and he kissed her. He immediately went and told his elders, "Hey, something happened, and I was wrong." And he dealt with his elders. Actually, fired him, and that was more of a knee-jerk reaction. But whatever. That wasn't the important thing. And David Hawking was the minister. He did ordain me. And he, to me, stands as a model of that's integrity. That's how you deal with it. And he was able to say, I didn't get caught doing this. I did something stupid, and I own it, and I've repented of it, and I confessed it, and I'll have some work to do. And I think that's a lot easier than victims come forward and tell you, he owned it. He immediately rectified it. And to me, that's part of leadership in and of itself. That to me said that dude's a leader.
I think what's amazing too, and I don't mean amazing in a good way, but in a very disturbing way, is the church's reaction is to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
What he did wasn't right. How he handled it was appropriate. There's still much unforgiveness by the church for someone who's done anything. And it's like, we have no problem taking a porn star who turns their life around and comes to Christ and forgiving them of everything they've ever done.
Right.
And then a Christian who literally kisses a woman and goes, "This was wrong. I'm married. I shouldn't have kissed this woman," and doesn't do anything further than that. And then we just throw them out. Oh well, they're trash now. They're of no use to us as a human anymore. And it's like, it's so wrong. I mean, we have talked about Michael Cheshire in 200 episodes, but I mean, in his book, Why We Eat Our Own, I mean, he really goes over that problem. And how the world looks at Christians and goes, man, you guys are like the most unforgiving people there are.
Right.
And they're not inaccurate in that.
Right.
And I just, so I mean, I know that wasn't the point of where we were going with that, but I think.
No, it's important, dude. It's important.
I think,
it's why I don't want to be hard on John Chris.
Yeah, that's, here's the point that I want people to get from that. You need to take responsibility. And like you said, it could mean you need to leave ministry, and you need to leave ministry immediately. But at the same time, we need to have forgiveness for those who are leaving ministry. We need to come alongside them. Jesus wouldn't abandon them, so what gives you the right to go out and abandon them?
Right.
And I'm not saying that means you are accepting of what they do. I mean, we don't abandon. We shouldn't be abandoning them.
Right. No, I agree, and I think it's important. And the thing is that everybody's going to say, like I can just hear where I say, look, I don't want to be hard on the guy. So people might raise up and say, oh, you got it. I'm not siding with anybody. I literally, if they're victims, I think I've said a million times on here. If they're, I don't know
anything about the story. I honestly, I saw the headline.
That's what I'm saying. But like I said, like I said at the beginning, this guy's, his own life is going to crap on him. He might go to jail.
He's a comedian. I don't understand. Why is this now a story? He's did he even claim to be anything other than a comedian?
Right. And so, but here's the thing. This is what I'm saying is I don't want to add. I don't want to be the guy to add to the hell this guy's about to go through because he's losing everything. He's losing everything and go to jail for what he's done.
Really? So bad.
He's victimized people. I mean, and I don't know. Like, we don't know. Is that too strong of a word? I mean, Stetzer came out and used that word. I haven't read the Charisma article that all this came out as an expose. I don't know what happened. So I'm not, this is why I said in the beginning, I'm not qualified to speak on anything regarding him. What I really wanted this podcast to be is more about us. Like, hey guys, obviously I'd be an idiot to think that any of you listening aren't also struggling with things, hopefully not the same things. But if you are, by all means, guys, I just can't say strongly enough. Don't stay in ministry if you've got something that you can't lick on your own, because it's only going to get worse. And inevitably down the road, it's going to come out. It's going to come out this way. And you don't want that. I don't want that. I think the world needs that. I don't think you want that. Just get the help. Like, it shouldn't be hard.
And while they're getting the help, and let's just say it's not bad enough for them to leave ministry, who can help them out with, let's say, payroll and church insurance and workers' comp and website design? Who can help them out with all that stuff?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Pete. I would personally go to simplifychurch.com.
Wait, let me write that down. What was that again?
Simplify Church. Not DOT, but the little dot, the period. Simplifychurch.com.
Wow. I'm going to have to remember that one.
Yes. And they will meet for all of your bookkeeping and IRS compliancy and even possibly staffing needs that you have. Oh, and they even come now with virtual assistants, should you so require that.
Robert Paulson?
It's gone kind of creepy, hasn't it? Where's our soundboard at? Do we have sound clips still?
No, here's what happened, man. I updated to Catalina on my Mac, and so the soundboard is incompatible with Catalina. So don't upgrade. I'm just telling everyone right now, don't upgrade. Like, half my programs don't work. Adobe doesn't work. And I don't know, to downgrade from Catalina.
Yeah. You know what? I heard that. So I'm not doing that. All right. Well, cool, guys. Thanks for joining Peyton and Pete today. This has been us, the real Peyton and Pete Mitchell, reminding you, if you're going to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Scott, it's time for this week. Stop it. Don't get down to the nitty-gritty. Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.